Hi everyone, welcome to the Sewing Studio. A little bit of a different one here again. Well, it's not, because we've done this once before. We're going to do some Freemotion quilting. Now last time, if you remember, I was using the Bernina stitch regulator, the BSR, but we've got our nice new Janome 9480 QC machine, and I thought we'd give it a go, because also from that video, which I think was a little while ago, we'll put a link to that one in the description for anybody that wants to go back and have a look at that one. We're not using a stitch regulator, we're using the new machine. So I thought we'd do it again, and I thought what we would do, I've held off finishing my Dresden Snowflake. So this was also a tutorial we've done recently, and I've purposely held off finishing it so we could record me doing it, because we did have a comment saying, oh, that would be nice to see the Freemotion. I haven't got a stitch regulator though. Can you just sort of show me without the stitch regulator? So apologies, it's taken a little while, but we're going to do that here now today. Now on this machine, and I'm still learning this machine, so this might go well, it might not, so fingers crossed. But there's actually a Freemotion setting in this one. So I've gone to that Freemotion setting, and I think Anna's done a video on some of the features of this machine. So there'll be another link so that you can go and have a look at that. But it is going to depend on your machine as to what you do, and if you've got a Freemotion setting. On my machine at home, where I do most of my Freemotion quilting, I don't have a Freemotion setting. I just put it on a straight stitch, drop my feed dogs, and away I go. Put the correct foot on, and away I go. So for this one, it says, I think there's 3 different feet that this one has for the Freemotion, and I've just selected the closed toe one. It doesn't really matter. They all sort of do the same job, but I like this one because it's clear and I can sort of see through it, and it gives me good visibility. It tends to be the foot I grab for at home, so I'm used to doing it with that foot. So I'm very comfortable with that. Like I say, I've just got it on a straight stitch, but I've got it in the Freemotion setting in this machine. So that's enough talking. Shall we get to action? Shall we do some Freemotioning? Now, as I said, this is the Dresden Snowflake, and I've actually just sort of made a backing, and I've just pieced a backing for this from some of the leftover fabrics from this fabric range. And I've made the fleece and the backing a little bit larger than the top. And the beauty of doing that with the Freemotion is it gives us a place to start and stop. So we don't necessarily have to be tying in ends. So I'm going to utilise that. And also the other thing I say to people when I sort of teach this is, don't think you have to do it all at once, particularly if you've got something like this. You can come in from the outside, do a little bit, and then go out again, and then come back in again. So you can almost sort of do it in small pieces, and then check as you're going along, am I happy with how that's going? Because don't forget, at the end of the day, this is just still sewing. This is just stitching, so you can unpick this. Now, if you've gone really small, it gets more problematical. But, you can still unpick it. So what I say to people is, don't feel you have to go around the whole thing. Sorry, just knocked the camera there. You can just come in, do a bit, and go out again. And I quite often do that at home. Just go in, do a bit, come out again. So I'm going to utilise this extra space around to do that. Okay, so as I said, we've got the machine setting on straight stitch in the Freemotion setting in the machine. I've dropped my feed dogs. I've got my Freemotion foot on. I've done a little practice ahead of time, one, just to make sure that the stitching's coming out okay, but also just to sort of loosen me up and get me into that Freemotion movement. So I recommend doing that. Just get a couple of pieces of scrap fabric, put a little bit of a quilt layer, wadding layer in between, make yourself a little mini quilt and just sort of practice on that. So I've done that ahead of time. And we're going to start. Now I've just selected a spot where I'm going to start. Doesn't really matter on this. I'm just going to quilt around the outside. So I'm going to start over here. And on this machine, when I put my foot down, because it's in a Freemotion setting, it will drop the needle once to allow me to bring my bottom thread up. Now, I would recommend you do that, even if you're starting on the outside, because if you've got a tail of thread from your bobbin underneath, you don't want it knotting and tangling up in under your work. And if you're starting and stopping on your piece itself, it's a good habit to get into, basically, is what I'm trying to get to there. So I'm going to drop my foot. We need to make sure we do that. I'm going to press my pedal. Now, I've got the machine on about half speed, and it recommends that in the book, and I've tried it out, because the other thing I should say as well is you and the machine need to be working at the same rate, and you dictate the speed. So don't try and keep up with the machine. You tell the machine what speed you want to be working at. I call it you need to be zen. We need to be zened together. We need to be working in perfect harmony, hopefully. So let's let the machine do its one stitch, and then that just allow me to pull up that bobbin thread. I'm just going to raise that without pulling it as hard. I should have not put my gloves on before I did that bit, but I think we can do it. If you've got a pair of tweezers, that sometimes helps. I will just talk about the gloves. We sell them here. They've just got little grippy bits. I'll put them under the close-up there. They've got little bobbles either side. I think we had a comment from the last one saying, have I got my gloves on upside down? No, you've got little bobbles either side, and it just gives you grip. I find I manoeuvre much better if I've got gloves on. Some people use, you can get a special hoop for it, but I like the gloves. So I'm going to come in, and I'm just going to squiggle. So exactly the same as we did with this stitch regulator, but without a stitch regulator. Right, here we go. All right, that's dropped my foot. Now I'm just going to do that one little bit because I'm going to stop and I'm going to check the back to make sure I'm happy with the tension. So I'm just going to look at that. Yes, I am. If I wasn't, I'd unpick and have a look at that again. One of the other questions I think we got is, how do you stop it eyelashing? Mostly that's due to, it could be a threading issue in terms of tension, but it might be that you're trying to pull against the machine, so you're actually sort of causing the tension issues. So this is where, like I say, you and the machine need to be working in harmony. So, right, let's just do our starter piece again. But this is where I said, you don't have to come in and do the whole bit. You can come in, do a little bit. Let's just get that thread out of the way so we know where it is. It's much easier to grab that. Oh, let's take my glove off. Let's try that again, if I haven't got my gloves on. Always say if you've got a little pair of tweezers. There we are, there's the thread, right. Now I can put my glove on. They're good for grip, they're not so good for sort of tight work. You haven't got the flexibility in your fingers with them. I'm just going to go out there and come in again. Now all I'm doing is trying to make sure I'm staying at a consistent speed, and I'm just squiggling. I'm not trying to make any sharp points. If you stop and go again, you'll make a bit of a peak. So if you keep your action nice and smooth, you'll get more sort of curved, rounded shapes. And there's no shortcut to this. It literally is just hours of practice. But little things like this are perfect to practice on. So if you do mess it up badly, but like I say, most of the time you can take the stitches out. You haven't lost much if it's just a small tabletop or a small quilt or a little cushion. So use those sorts of things to practice on. Now, once again, I can go to the outside, stop, take a breather. I could tell my shoulders were getting a bit tight, and you want to sort of keep your shoulders dropped, relaxed. Remember to breathe. We need oxygen. But you can see that's going quite quickly there. So let's just go around the corner here, and then perhaps we'll take it out off the machine and show you under the close-up how things are looking. Now it's getting a bit tricky there. Now also, just to say, I can sort of keep my hands here either side. You almost want to make a triangle because that's where you've got the most control. So let's just cut that thread a minute and we'll show you under the close-up. So that's how that's looking. So all my stitches aren't perfectly even, but they're close enough. And actually, by the time you've done it and stood back, you get the overall texture. You don't necessarily always see individual stitches or groups of stitches. So it is about adding texture. So, you know, particularly while you're learning, don't get too frustrated. But the smoother you can keep everything going, and the more you can match the machine the machine can match your speed, the sort of more even and more consistent stitches you will get. So it's just about trying to keep that nice smooth motion, finding a pace that works well for you. If you go too slow, it gets a bit juddery. If you go too quick, you know, you're chasing to keep up with the machine. So I tend to find sort of around the halfway point. On my machine, I go to the halfway point and just nudge it up a little bit. On this machine, I'm almost dead on the halfway point. So it does differ on the machines, depend how they're geared. And the way my machine works at home, it sort of ramps up as it's sort of sewing. It sort of starts in a slower gear, if you like, and gears. So I'm more used to doing that. But actually, I found that quite similar. You just got to find your speed and your rate. So I'm going to finish off getting that one done, but you can sort of see, and I just sort of decide where I'm going to go with my squiggles as I go. But, you know, certainly having a space to sort of come in and come out, again, makes it easier. The one thing you don't want to do is sort of get yourself caught in an area and then you can't get out because you've already quilted that bit. But if you do, don't panic, just break your thread there. You can always sort of tie off and bury that knot later on and just go back out and come back in again. So it does take practice, as I say, but hopefully you've seen that there. It's exactly the same movement as we did with the stitch regulator, but you're having to keep that smoothness and that evenness of the quilt and the stitch moving as you go. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Probably one other thing, sorry, but just before I finish, I need to say at home as well, you can get these sort of slippy mats that can go onto your machine bed. That one wasn't too bad, actually. Sometimes you can feel like things are sort of gripping, and you can get these slider mats that can help sort of move things. So if you're finding it's sort of quite hard and it's a bit grippy underneath, you might benefit from one of those. And certainly, like I say, I always do it with gloves. I find those gloves give me just the grip on the quilt that you need. It's always easier to start on a small thing. Once you do a large quilt, it's not just about being able to free motion, you're fighting the weight of the quilt. So certainly as you're learning, practice on small things to get your technique, because then it's going to be a lot easier and you're going to be a lot happier when it comes to doing a big item. So I hope that's given you a bit of inspiration, a bit of an idea that perhaps you give it a go. Do stay patient with yourself. It does take a little while to grasp. If you find you don't do this very well in terms of mapping out where you need to go, you can get stencils that you can use, that you can mark your quilt, and there is one that does a little stipple. So, you know, not everybody can see sort of where it needs to go. So you might also find that helpful as you're beginning it as well. So I hope you found that useful. I've got a bit more homework to do now to finish this off. So thank you for joining me here again today for a little bit of free motion, and I hope you'll join us again here next time in the sewing studio.